Well, hello once again. This is Jennifer McGuire, and I'm back with another stamping video for you. Today, I thought I'd share with you how I like to do repeat stamping with masking. This is great when you have like a large solid image of any shape, and you can create a really fun background out of that one image. I have a bunch of different examples for you with it kind of changing up the technique each time. And I'm going to start with this one here first with the repeated stars. Now I'm using a new stamp set from the Hero Arts November My Monthly Hero Kit. The kit includes everything you see here, including that large 6x8 stamp set, the coordinating dies, a couple inks, and 60 of those tags that you see there. So there's a lot jam-packed into here for a very good price. I'm going to focus on this stamp set right now. Now this stamp set, again, is 6x8, so it's large. It has the 4 large images, also a handful of smaller images that go with it nicely, and a ton of sentiments that would work with these and other stamp sets. I'm going to start by creating my mass. For mass, I really like to use Post-it notes with the full sticky. That means the entire back of the Post-it note is sticky, so they're perfect for mask and inexpensive. I'm quickly stamping a star onto a stack of Post-it notes. I have about 5 Post-it notes that I'm going to hold together and cut out at the same time, so I can end up with multiple star mass. For this technique, it's easier to have multiple mass. You don't have to, but I think it's easier. And also, I'm going to make another one of these cards off camera, so I needed a lot of mass for it. Since this is easy to cut, I'm just going to cut right around the edge. Now I am using a stamp positioner today. I do find this technique is easier with the stamp positioner. However, if you don't have one, you can definitely draw pencil guidelines so that you can do this technique, and it does work just fine. I've done it in the past this way, but a stamp positioner is very helpful. This is the MISTI stamping tool, and I am working with the regular size one, and the working area in the center there is 8.5 inches. I am going to center my paper and my stamp into this MISTI. I also find it helpful to make a little mark there at 4 1/4. That is the center point of this 8.5 inch opening. And I can always rub that mark off with some cleaning solution later if I need to. I'm working with 5.5 inch wide cardstock here because that's how wide my resulting card will be. I'm going to center that up in the center of my MISTI. That means 1.5 inches from both sides. So you can see it centered there. You can also use the grid lines on the paper that I'm working on to help center it if you wanted to. Now I'm going to center the star, making sure that the center of my star is at that halfway point that I made a little mark on, which is 4 1/4. And by the way, none of this has to be exact. I happen to be an engineer by training, so I tend to go with exact measurements, but it really does not need to be exact. Okay, so now I have my stamp centered in my MISTI, and I have my paper ready to go. So I'm going to center up my paper once again, use a MISTI Bar Magnet to hold it in place. And I'm going to stamp the first star. This one doesn't matter. I'm just stamping it very quickly, just lightly, because I'm going to cut out another star and put it over this one later. But this is my center point that I can start from. Now I'm going to shift my paper up in my MISTI 1/2 inch. That happens to be 2 little squares on that grid paper in the background. And I'm going to stamp this again and get a nice, good image. This is Hero Arts Tide Pool ink. And then I'm going to place a mask over that star so we can move on to the next color. Again, I'm going to shift it up 1/2 inch. I like to follow the guides on the side there, the measurement guides on the MISTI. This time I'm stamping with a green ink, pressing that down firmly. And then again, I'll put a mask on that one. This is why it's handy to have multiple masks. Now between the blue and the green ink, I just wiped it off with a dry cloth to clean off my stamp. But since I'm going from green to yellow, and I really want my yellow star to be a true yellow, I'm cleaning my stamp with Ultra Clean Stamp Cleaner from Hero Arts, and then I'm drying it off with a dry cloth. That stamp cleaner is great at removing all color, even if the stamp is stained, so that you can move on to the next color. And here you can see I get a nice bright yellow color. Okay, so again, I'm going to put a mask over it and shift it up another 1/2 inch. Notice my paper is hanging outside of the MISTI at the top when I shift it, but that's okay. It doesn't matter at all. Make sure you put that bar magnet down, and then you can clean off your little stamp there. This time I just wiped it with a dry cloth, and I've moved on to a soft orange color. Now you'll notice it's very helpful to have multiple masks for this. I'm going to take these masks off in a moment and use them on the other side of the card. But you want to be careful not to reuse a Post-it mask like this too much, because the mask will become saturated with ink and it might bleed through to your image underneath. So always make sure that the ink isn't bleeding through to the other side before you use it. So I've done this one side here, and now I can remove the mask. Don't worry about that star in the center looking kind of pathetic there. I'm going to cover it up in a moment. But first, I'm putting my paper back in the center, shifting it down a 1/2 inch, and now we're going to do the exact same thing, but on the other side of the card. This time, instead of shifting up a 1/2 inch each time, I'm going to shift down a 1/2 inch each time. And again, I'm going to put a mask on it each time I do the stamping. Now you'll notice my masks are cut a little bit tinier than the image I'm putting them on. So you can see a little bit of my stars peeking out from that mask. That is because when you stamp over the mask, the ink doesn't go all the way up to the edge of the mask, so I like to cut my mask slightly smaller, just a hair smaller than the image, and then my images will go right up against each other. And check out that beautiful background. It'll be even better when we cover up that center. Now for the center, I'm creating a silver star, so I'm stamping the same star with VersaMark ink onto white cardstock, and I'll heat emboss it with silver embossing powder. Once I've heat embossed it and let it cool, I'm going to put it back in my MISTI and stamp again right on top of the embossing with VersaMark ink once again, and add another layer of embossing powder. This will give me more dimension and a very smooth look to my heat embossing. I really like to double up layers like that. You can see having a stamping tool is very helpful because you can stamp right on top of the first image perfectly. However, if you have a stamp with an acrylic block, you can look right down through the stamp and stamp on top of it. And I've done that before, and if you're very careful, you can do it with no problem. Now I'm adding the star to cover up that center one, right in the center there, with some foam tape so it has a bit of dimension. Now I wanted to put this onto a silver card where the silver matched the embossing on the star. So I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white note card where I've just rubbed VersaMark ink along the top edge and the bottom edge. And now I'm going to put silver embossing powder on those areas. Doesn't matter how pretty it is because you only need a little bit to peek out from behind our stamped panel. So I'll go ahead and heat set this. Then I took my stamped panel and I trimmed a little bit off the top and the bottom so that that silver embossing will peek through. I have a piece of white craft foam that I have glued behind the stamp panel so that I have some dimension, and then I put that right onto the center of the card. And you can see the silver embossing peeking out of the top and the bottom. And I added a sentiment white heat embossed on a black cardstock strip right to the center of the star. And that sentiment is from the same Hero Arts My Monthly November kit. So there you can see the final card. I decided not to add any embellishments. Now I created another card using the exact same technique. So you can see the snowflakes in the background. I stamped and masked those and shifted a 1/2 inch each time, just like I did on the other example. But this time I have snowflakes. Now on this one, I wanted to show you how I created that center snowflake there that has lots of shine to it. I used my MISTI stamping tool again, but you can definitely use an acrylic block for this if that's all you have. What I like to do is first stamp with my colored ink, then clean the stamp and stamp right on top of it with VersaMark ink. Some people like to do it the other way around, but I find I get best results if I put the VersaMark ink on top. Then I added Hero Arts Sparkle Embossing Powder, which is an old favorite of mine, and heat set that, and you get a beautiful, colorful image with lots of sparkle to it. Now, this I wanted to cut with the coordinating die in the kit. However, the kit dies have a little hole that it cuts at the top, so you can make this into a tag, which is great, but for this I didn't want that hole. So I'm going to do some partial die cutting. I lined the die up around the stamped image, but I'm going to leave that whole part of the die hanging out from the plate. So you can see the plate goes up just to the hole. I'm going to run that through, so this will only cut out most of the snowflake, but not that part with the hole. Now what I'm going to do is rotate my die so that the hole is on the area where I've already cut. And now I can run this through to cut the part that I didn't cut before. So now I'm going to put this through and put my plate covering up just the bottom area because that's the part that didn't cut before. And now I can cut out the rest of the snowflake. Sometimes you got to get a little creative just to avoid having to fussy cut out the snowflake. There we have our finished piece, and I added that with foam tape to the center of the card, just like I did on the last example. Now for this one, I did decide to leave the note card white, so there's no silver peeking out from the top and the bottom. And I just stamped with navy ink the warmest wishes onto a little strip to put on the center. And I put some silver foil gems right onto the tips of the center snowflake, just to add a little bit of interest. So you can see how this technique works with a variety of different shapes, and you can use any color inks you have. Next, I wanted to show you this variation on the technique where I did a line of trees that kind of go off to the side. To do this, I went ahead and I just stamped a tree where I wanted it to start in my MISTI, left the tree in the MISTI, and I'm going to mask off the tree, shift down 3/4 of an inch, so a little bit more than last time. This time it's 3 squares, which is 3/4 of an inch, and stamp another green tree. Again, I will mask it, shift down 3/4 of an inch again, and then stamp the next tree. So you can vary how much these overlap by how much you shift each time you stamp. And this time I'm only stamping by shifting down on my MISTI, so I get a line of trees. I'm not doing it from both directions, so it does save some time. Here I partially die cut the tree using that tree die, but since there's a hole in the top, I didn't cut that part. And I'm just going to fussy cut the top by hand. Very easy to do. This tree, again, I stamped with the dark green ink and then stamped with VersaMark on top of it and added the sparkle embossing powder, just like I did on the navy snowflake. I added it to the card with foam tape, and then I used a little warmest wishes on a red cardstock strip and added some silver foil gems to the little tree. So this gives you a little bit of a different look than the last one, and you could use any inks for this technique. Now I have one more variation for you, and it's the ornament card that you see here, where the images kind of move up and down too. So I stamped my first ornament, and I've left the stamp in the same place in the MISTI, but I'm going to shift my paper down 3/4 of an inch and out 1/2 of an inch. Again, you can follow your little squares if you don't want to worry about measurements. So I went down 3 squares and out 2 squares. Again, I'm going to put down my little mask, stamp the next ornament, and then I can go ahead and move my paper again. I'm going to move back up against the edge of the MISTI and down 3/4 of an inch. So each time I'm shifting in both directions, so you get a little bit more variation. Now you can see how you can change up the images and get a different look each time by doing this technique. Something that works great with any solid images that you may have, or almost solid images like I'm using today. Now I went ahead and repeated this until I covered the whole card with a variety of red colored inks. And then I red sparkle heat embossed an ornament to go right on that focal point ornament. Now the sentiment is from this Happy Hanukkah stamp set that Hero Arts just came out with. It's a great Hanukkah stamp set. I know many people were looking for some this season. I recommend that one. I used Hope Your Holiday Sparkles with silver embossing powder. And I used a glitter pen to draw the lines that go down to each ornament. So I just used a ruler and a glitter pen. And then I did a silver bow on top of the main ornament. So you can see how this technique is really fun by combining repetitive stamping with masking. And again, if you don't have the MISTI stamping tool, you can just use a ruler to draw pencil lines and use that as a guide to help you do this technique. I hope this was helpful to you. All the supplies are linked below in my YouTube description. Please go to my blog for more photos of each card. In the middle are a couple other videos with similar techniques that you might find helpful. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll come back soon and have a great week.